On Selling with Mark McCormack. After years of experience in the high-powered realm of international business, Mark H. McCormack, the founder and chairman of the International Management Group, has decided to share the winning strategies he feels are necessary to become a success in the world of sales.
There are no fads in selling. Selling never changes. It always has been and always will be a simple three-step process whereby you, 1, identify the customer, 2, reach the customer, and 3, persuade the customer to buy. If you sell for a living, you know this is the blunt, unwavering formula for success. At any point in the sales process, if you're not doing one of these 3 things, then you're just not selling. With that in mind, let's get started. Here are the qualities that I believe make a good salesperson. Common sense. Common sense will tell you to step back and look at my business. Common sense will tell you to talk to people who know me. The following tactics really work with me. Tell me it's the best. Reach me through my family. See the small picture. Save me money. Be my friend. Cater to my personal agenda. The components of common sense. There are some fundamental business skills that are more or less unteachable. All good salespeople need a keen sense of timing. The best people know how to handle rejection. The best salespeople also have personal charm. The key is to break down the components of common sense into those that can be taught and those that cannot. Focus on the former rather than the latter, and master each one at a time. In selling, there are 5 skills that can be learned by anyone. 1, know your product. 2, talk less. 3, know your buyer. 4, aim low. And 5, promise less.
Recently, Mark McCormack held a weekend seminar with several MBA students to share his experiences. His conclusions about selling can help anyone who wants to reach the top of his or her field.
Mark, do you believe that anyone can be taught to be a good salesperson, or do you believe that it's a skill that's more inherent in someone's personality?
I think there are certain elements of selling that are inherent. There are an awful lot of things, I think, that can be taught. A presentation, speech, how to use humor, how to prepare for a sales call, how to sit, how to dress. All these things can be taught. There is certain intuitiveness about certain elements of selling that people just do, and you can teach someone to be a very good salesman. Getting the customers you deserve. Now in sales, you get the customers you deserve. If you want to be a better salesperson, seek out better customers. But many people wouldn't know the perfect customer if he or she was sitting in front of them saying yes to everything.
Mark, what are some of the qualities that can best help you identify the perfect customer?
You've got to learn all about what they do, what their competition does, where they presently are vis-a-vis their competition. Figure out in your own mind how what you have to sell can help them solve their problems. Most salesmen want to solve their own problems, which is selling a product, and they don't care enough about what the customer wants. I remember years ago I had a very good friend who was the general manager of the Lincoln Mercury division of the Ford Motor Company. He was a good personal friend, and I was all over the place with all kinds of new things. We were representing the U.S. ski team, we had golfers, we had tennis players, and I was sending him proposals on everything. They had a car called the Mercury Cougar. The skiers are going to wear the Cougar skiing down the mountain, or Cougar is going to sponsor this, or going to have the Lincoln Mercury Sports Club for golfers. It became a joke, and finally he said to me, Mark, he said, you have absolutely no clue how to sell Lincoln Mercury. All you care about is getting rid of all the things you have to sell. If you'll bring 2 associates up to Detroit, I will tell you what Lincoln Mercury wants and how to sell us. So I took 2 executives up to Detroit, and they said, look, tennis is growing. We like tennis. Women's liberation movement was just starting. Women are becoming more and more decision makers in terms of what car to buy. So we like something that appeals to women. We also like a competition where women could play against men and have a chance of winning. And we like a television ingredient. If you can come up with all those, we will be interested. So we went back and we invented an event that was called the World Invitational Tennis Classic that Lincoln Mercury and Ford sponsored for 10 years. We took 4 men and 4 women. They played a singles semifinal and final for the women, a singles semifinal and final for the men. And whether you were a man or a woman, any match you won a point. And the one that won the most points won. And the first year, Margaret Court won the prize. The thing went on for 10 years, but it was, again, me learning what they wanted. And salesmen don't care about that. They get told, you got to sell sponsorship to this event. So you go to 25 companies and try to sell sponsorship without really finding out what each of those companies want. Learn to shift from the sales mode to the acceptance mode.
Mark, how do you take no for an answer, and when do you follow up on a prospect that has rejected your proposal?
I think you have to understand the prospect a little bit. I remember once taking an executive into to lunch one day. We were having a meeting. I said, let's go have lunch. He said, I'll go to lunch with you, but I'm not going to eat. I said, okay. So we go to lunch, and we go to an Italian restaurant. Waiter comes over with the menus, and my friend says, I don't want a menu, just give me a cup of coffee. Fine. And then he starts describing the pasta of the day to me. And as he left the table, he said to my friend, can I just bring a little salad? Okay, bring me a little salad. And then he comes back, take my order, and he describes the pasta again. I said, I'm going to try that pasta. Finally, my friend said, you know, that pasta sounds good. I think I'll have that too. About a month later, he was a decision maker at a company we were doing business with. Somebody went over and came back and said that this guy had rejected a proposal on some sporting event we were presenting. And I thought to myself, you know, when this guy says no, it doesn't necessarily mean no, if you maybe present it a different way. So rather than just filing that away and saying, forget it, I said, why don't you go back on another day with another approach? And he indeed said yes. So you have to figure out, first of all, how strong the no is, and you have to know your customer. If it just gets aggravating and they keep saying no, 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 and you don't want to be a pest, I think that what you do is just very frontally deal with it and say, look, I don't want to waste your time. I think this is a great idea. You've been telling me maybe for a long time, and I can't get you to say yes or no, definitely. And tell me what to do, you know, and they'll be straight with you more often than not. He talks, you listen. He needs you, and you don't abuse it. He says no without stiffing you. He's not a pushover. You implicitly give him your best price. How to rate a meeting, or my favorite hidden agendas. My criteria for a great meeting have little to do with making a sale, or for that matter, even pitching a specific concept. Sometimes the only item on my agenda is finding out whether I really like the customer or he likes me.
Is it possible to establish a successful business relationship with someone with whom you don't personally get along with?
I think so. I think harder, but I think it's a question of what product it is that you have. And I think if you have something that they need, or conversely, they're the best person to buy your particular product, to sponsor your particular event, I think you can have a relationship with someone you don't get along with. I think it's certainly not the optimum way to go into business, but I think it can happen. Do you like the customer? Why are they doing business with the competition? What do they think our company does? Do they have a budget? Is there an emotional buyer in the building? What makes a loyal customer? If steady repeat business is the most heavenly condition in business, and believe me it is, then loyalty is the most important quality to look for among your customers. There's no mystery to creating loyal customers. Smother them with service, service, and more service.
How do you balance still servicing that customer adequately versus budgeting your time to go out and find new business?
I think the biggest loyalty that you should have is to your existing customers. It is far better to worry about servicing an existing customer. I'm reminded of a story again in the automobile industry where Chrysler decided to do a major marketing push to try to get new people driving Chryslers. It turned out that they were spending $2,000 or $3,000 per customer to get a new person driving a Chrysler, or even more than that. At the same time, an old customer would have a problem with a brake and go in and they'd say the warranty has run out, you have to pay for it. And they were losing customers from that kind of thing. And they finally woke up and decided that, you know, if we spent a fraction of the money we're spending trying to attract people to buy Chryslers instead of Fords on keeping the old customers happy, we'd be far better off. And I think that's a good lesson, because I think that your old customers and the loyalty that you engender with them from good service, from continued attention, are actually your best resource.
There's a lot of companies that are very concerned with offering really good customer service right now. And how can they actually benefit from it? Is it more of just keeping customers, or do you feel that's a way that they can actually gain more customers?
You got to recognize that customer service is something that a lot of people will be querying people you've done business with about the kind of service you give. They aren't going to take your word for it. The more in depth you go to provide the extraordinary customer service, the more rewards that'll be at the end of the rainbow, so to speak, for you for doing it. Some businesses, especially those where the seller has to go to the customer rather than the customer coming to a store, require more subtle methods for developing customer loyalty. Now, this is certainly true in our business. As a result, we seek in our customers slightly different qualities and circumstances. We seek a good memory on their part, more than just one friend to rely on at the company, our entanglement in more than one sale at the company, when to fire your customers. Some clients and customers, no matter how willing they are to buy your product or service, simply are just not worth it.
Mark, could you explain the most obvious customer to avoid?
Well, I suppose one that you don't, that you really know doesn't need your product, or doesn't want your product, or that you know hates you and your company, or one that's in bed with your biggest competition. And I mean, there are many, many customers you'd want to try to avoid. Getting customer entertainment right. Entertaining customers properly so they like you, so you learn something about them, and so they might consider buying from you in the future, is not so much a function of venue, but rather of three often overlooked factors. One, it has to be unique. Two, it must be executed well. And three, it should somehow enhance your relationship.
What do you believe are some of the more creative ways, yet economical, ways to entertain sales prospects?
I think uniqueness is the key. I think the first thing you have to do is to figure out what your sales prospect likes to do. Years ago, if you were a marketing director or a CEO, you'd get an opportunity to play golf with an Arnold Palmer or Jack Nicklaus. That was a very unique experience. But today, the CEO or marketing director of a major company will get 40 opportunities to do that each year, so it's no longer a big deal. So you have to be a little creative and a little unique in what you offer people to do. Uniqueness.
Are these sort of events being viewed as prerequisites now to building relationships with companies?
I don't think so, but I think they're certainly very, very good vehicles. I remember years ago, Hertz was interested in doing a partnership with Lufthansa. Hertz had a contract with Jackie Stewart, the Formula One driver. The Lufthansa executives were nuts about Formula One racing. So Hertz took the 2 or 3 top Lufthansa executives down to Monte Carlo, had Jackie Stewart host them for the weekend, take them to the pits, introduce them to the drivers, drive in a van around the race course, telling them on a loudspeaker what speed they were at during the race itself. And I think that was a typical and very effective example of how this kind of thing can be done. I think it's a question, as I say, of staying ahead of the game. You start out with, I want a meeting. All right, that's the most formal and impersonal thing. Then I want to have breakfast, or I want to have lunch, or I want to have dinner, or I want to play golf with you, myself. Let's go out and play golf, my club. Then you go from there to a customer entertainment. We are doing this, and would you like to come? So it's all a progression. And depending upon the relationship, depending on what you're able to do, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, one or more of those things can work. Execution.
If I do this, won't the clients that I'm giving something to expect that sometime down the road?
That's a very, very good point, Scott. First of all, what you're really giving in the instance isn't necessarily something in advance. What you're acquiring is the opportunity to get to know a customer in a social environment which is conducive to building a relationship, which in turn is conducive to getting a sale. But you're right. As a matter of fact, the current chairman of Wimbledon told me that when you invite someone to the Royal Box in the first year, you are an absolute hero. If your relationship with that person is here, you invite them to the Royal Box and it goes to there. But the second year, if you don't invite them to the Royal Box, then your relationship's gone down to there because they're kind of expecting it. And it's a very complicated one because once you start, it's sometimes difficult to pull back from it. The 7 sins of salesmanship, or what makes customers mad. 1, you don't deliver the product. 2, you don't deliver on price. 3, you don't deliver on time. 4, 2 out of 3 is okay. 5, selling and walking. 6, ignoring the details. 7, not even knowing why they're mad.
Mark, what are the 7 sins of salesmanship?
If you don't deliver the product, if you don't deliver it on time, if you don't deliver it at the price that you've agreed to deliver it at, ignoring all the details, selling and then walking away from the deal would be a sin, as opposed to servicing the deal. And I think maybe the worst sin is if your customer is mad and irritated about something, is not knowing why they're mad or irritated. So I think those are the major sins of salesmanship that I can think of. Putting some heat into your cold calls. Unless you're in a business where the phone is always ringing, where the world is beating a path down to your door to buy your product or service, you have to make cold calls to sell. Have a pretext. Set modest goals for yourself. Invite them to something. Aim high in the hierarchy. Use tact to seek out the decision maker. Don't be too slick. Find a friendly ear.
What would be some suggestions that you might give a salesperson so that he or she could put more heat into his or her cold calls?
If you're not lucky enough to have a product that everyone's beating down your door to get to, you're going to have to, as a salesman, make some cold calls. And I think that to do that, I think you've got to be able to do some research, to have a pretext, if you will, for your sale. I think you have to aim high enough at the company you're trying to sell to have the right impact. I think it helps sometimes to invite the people to something, to get to know them a little bit, give them something a little extra, to listen to your story, and try not to be too slick, try to be humble, and try to be sure that you get an opportunity to expose your product to them. The Trojan horse stratagem, or 4 ways to get your foot in the door. In most business, getting the proverbial foot in the door is the toughest part of making a sale. The fact is, most prospects don't know who you are, what your company can do, and why you're even bothering them. Before you can sell to people like this, you have to educate them. You literally have to get their permission to make a sale. The free offer as a Trojan horse. The consultant as a Trojan horse. The deal as a Trojan horse. The friend as a Trojan horse.
You talk in your book about the Trojan horse philosophy of salesmanship. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, I think it's being able to get into the camp of the person you're selling to. Either get on their side of the table against their competition, get in there with a small sale with real hopes of getting a big one, making them trust you because you've done something little for them, and figuring that if you've done something little well and they trust you, that they'll trust you to do something big. But to get inside their camp, as opposed to trying to conquer it with one fell swoop. How to put more power into your powerful ideas. It's one thing to come up with a brilliant idea. Making it practical and bringing it to fruition is an achievement of an entirely different order. Hook it up to another engine. Push the good along with the bad.
Mark, what are some simple strategies to make your ideas more palatable to people that are more inclined to resist an idea than embrace it?
I suppose to just show them how that idea can work for them specifically rather than generally. You know, you can say, sponsor a golf tournament. It's a great idea, good visibility, and they'll kind of not be ready to embrace that. But if you say to them that if you sponsor a golf tournament in Dallas, where you have a big plant, you'll be able to entertain the 10,000 employees and their families at the golf tournament, and you've been having some labor disputes, and this would be a nice thing to be seen to be doing. I mean, you can give them reasons that are unique to and indigenous to their business that envelops your idea rather than presenting it to them in a vacuum. On becoming well informed. What could be better than a customer honestly leveling with you? Now, in my ideal world, all customers would teach me how they wanted to be sold. Candor begets candor. People love to talk about themselves. Don't forget that. And let them do it. Give a little bit in return. Test your source's authority.
What strategies do you have to lead the customer to level with you?
I think if you're leveling with the other person, anytime you're in selling a product for a price, people think, oh, well, that's negotiable. If you're a company that's got got a reputation for being expensive, then they think it's very negotiable. If you have a reputation for being a good negotiator, a good salesman, they get a little defensive and panicked. And I think candor of saying, look, we're in business to make money. We have payroll to make. We have office rent to pay. We want to expand our business just like you do. But we don't want to make unreasonable money. We'll come in here and we'll give you this at cost plus. We'll open our books. We're trying to make 10% on this. We're going to sell this to you for $20,000 and it's costing us $18,000 to do it. And here's why it costs us $18,000. That kind of candor disarms somebody who's ready to resist your sales pitch based upon price, based upon your reputation, based upon his or her own insecurities. The sales mode is the tough part of selling. Acceptance is the easy part. Now, in theory, since the end games of most sales are identical, the process should be automatic and mechanical. Going through the motions will do, as long as the motions include the following: a vow of silence, a written follow-up, and a timely exit.